Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you all for joining us for this webinar, which is an introduction to the Geopolitical Forecasting Platform that has just been launched by New Lines Institute and Mantis Analytics. We appreciate you guys joining us. We are also recording this session for those that are not able to make it at this time. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So just a bit on the agenda for this webinar. It shouldn't last more than 30 minutes or so for our presentation. So we definitely want to leave plenty of time for the Q&A at the end. But we'll start off with some introductions of those of us that will be presenting today, followed by a demonstration of the geopolitical forecasting platform, after which we'll get into some custom applications of the platform, including for things like simulations, both at the policy level and the business level, and the upcoming events and in the process to become early adopters for this platform. So I'll just start off with a brief introduction of myself, and the other speakers will introduce themselves as they go along. So my name is Eugene Chaosovsky. I am Senior Director at New Lines Institute, a nonpartisan foreign policy think tank based in Washington, D.C. And I oversee the Analytical Development and Training Department, where we basically integrate analytical methodologies, including geopolitical analysis and forecasting, both for internal training purposes, but also for external engagements with various clients from universities to businesses, governments, NGOs, etc. And this platform that we have developed jointly with Mantis Analytics, which Maxime will introduce himself here in just a minute, is basically the integration and synthesis of all of the different types of services, products, and methodologies that we have. So with that, we can jump to the next slide. So a little bit about the platform. So as I mentioned, New Lines Institute has partnered with Mantis Analytics, which is an AI and tech startup, to launch this AI-powered platform that essentially allows to forecast geopolitical trends around the world and to simulate their impacts in a very functional standpoint on everything from supply chain to operational implications for businesses, for NGOs, governments, etc. And so the platform and the suite of accompanying services, which we'll get into in just a minute, is basically designed for various stakeholders across different industries, those that I've already mentioned, like governments and universities, as well as civil society. And it's essentially designed to mitigate risk and to make decisions, to enhance decision making amid political, economic, and security uncertainty. As I'm sure all of you are aware, right now the world is in a very dynamic geopolitical place, and we've seen that impacts on our daily lives in a number of different ways. And so this platform will also demonstrate how geopolitical shocks or any kind of factors geopolitically can cascade and impact operational implications in a structured environment that allows all of the users to test resilience and basically have a greater readiness for policy and business plans. And here I'll pass it over to my colleague, Maxime, if you want to briefly introduce yourself, and we'll get into the next slide.
So hi all, so my name is Maxim and I'm CEO of Mantis Analytics. Basically in this partnership, we're responsible for technology component for the platform and product development. And I'm excited today just to present our work. But first, let me start from the problem itself. We entered like really global turbulence in terms of the geopolitical risks and impact of the supply chain operations. So basically including like army conflicts, like natural disaster, protests, tariffs, wars, and so on. All these factors like dynamically like change it and impact supply chain operation. And also I want to mention like weaponization of supply chain. So in modern world, it's a part of the world polarizations, and it's basically used in the global confrontation. In this case, companies and government organizations continuously disrupted for the supply chain. And our goal just to create effective solution how to manage such kind of disruption and risk from different perspective, like geopolitical, cyber, natural disasters, and so on. And we see a big problem that only 20 percentages of data in like average organization is effectively like analyzed. And we want to change that, and when we want to create like a solution for effective management of global disruption. So next slide. And now I want to cover like main components of the platforms that we will present to you like today in live. First of all, with the platform, you can like effectively monitor like global geopolitical events on the daily and weekly basis. Next slide. Also, we help like to visualize additional data point, for example, like global trade flows data or country profiles and so on and so on. So our platform is basically like focused on effective visualizations that analysts can take like right like attention and focus on which like what is like matters most. Next slide. But we go like beyond the just monitoring. It's also like a simulation engine, which allow us just to simulate like different kind of scenarios of geopolitical developments and understand how the company of or like government organization should basically react to these scenarios. Next slide. And in following scenarios in the platform, we can basically plan some kind of strategic decisions, like how we will react to specific geopolitical scenarios and development. And next slide. What is like mostly like important, how we will evaluate such kind of decisions in terms of the impact on key areas of organization.
Great. Thanks very much, Maxime. So that was a very obviously high-level overview of some of the core features of the platform. So now what I'd like to do, if I can just share another the demo itself. And I'm having some trouble pulling it up. One moment. Okay. Can you all see my screen? Okay, great. So yes, this is basically kind of going through step by step some of the features that Maxime just referenced. So here we have our geopolitical forecasting platform in action, and there's a few different features that I want to highlight, that kind of all together encompass the platform. So as you all can see, we have a number of these different icons across the world here. So for example, and these are what we call the country profiles. So if you click on the United States, it will pull up a geolocated map, obviously a flag, some key statistics and data related to that country. So including key leader, the latest population data, some GDP figures, military spending. And then if you click on the see details component of that, that will actually take us to our most recent forecast of that particular country. In this case, we just published a Q4 2025 forecast report that appears to not be popping up, but that should give you. We'll get to that report actually in just a few minutes when we get into the report section. But that can be found across all of these countries around the world. We've got several key countries across Latin America, across the EU, the UK, across Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, and the Indo-Pacific as well. So that's one key feature of the platform. Another key feature is what we call the incident feed, and this is where these pie charts and numbers come in. So this is basically a curated list of geopolitical developments that we update on a regular weekly basis, in which case our team of geopolitical analysts essentially select the most relevant, the most impactful geopolitical dynamics across the world, and especially those that would have some kind of operational supply chain implications. So as an example of this, and I should note that you can actually filter this in a number of different ways. You can look at events from today, from this week, this month, going, and you can even create your own custom range. Whoops. And then you can also filter it further here by different types of incidents. So, for example, you can look at different security, economic, diplomatic actions. You can look at it by different severity and impact levels that we assess in terms of the risk or opportunity of those items, and then by locations as well. So, for example, and I've got the screen now somehow turned on its head. So let me just get back over here. Okay. So for example, here we're taking a look, we've kind of focused in on Russia, for example, And we can pull up this item from this past week of the G7, basically talking about maximum pressure on Russia. And this includes a number of different features. So in this case, this was the G7 pledging to pursue significant and coordinated measures against nations importing Russian oil. So this is the category as we're looking at this as rhetorical action, a risk level of medium. If you click on this web link here, it will actually take you to the original article. Not sure if that's is still showing up on my screen or not. Um, and then the date of that, and then obviously the geolocation. You can look at further details here. This is a diplomatic action related to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, fuel shortages due to Ukrainian strikes in Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, all of these actions, like I said, can be filtered on both a time standpoint and on a geographic standpoint. The next feature is the interactive trade map, um, which I will just pull up here. And I may need some assistance here. One moment, see if this works. Nope, it's not sharing for some reason. So maybe Milos, if you don't mind sharing your screen and pulling up the trade feature.
Right on, just give me 1 second for that.
Evgeny, I think you need to just re-log in the platform.
Okay, here we go. Thank you, Maxime. So this is, yes, as Maxime briefly highlighted, this is the way to visualize trade flows. I know that there's a lot going on the screen, but as with the incident feed, the geopolitical developments, you can also customize and categorize what you're seeing here as well. So this is basically total trade between various countries. You can look at the year, you can look at the different categories. So we kind of isolated key trade categories, including things like energy supplies, like crude oil, natural gas, coal. We look at things like rare earth elements, semiconductor devices, and other technology, as well as critical minerals, aluminum, steel, copper, etc. So, for example, if you wanted to look at U.S. total trade, and this is, we're looking at the U.S. as the exporter, and you can click on these arrows, and it will show you, for example, U.S. total trade with Canada for the year 2024. This represented 348 billion. The percentage of those exports of US total exports, so 16.9% here. We can also look at China, for example, and then we can also isolate them by various import partners and trade categories. So, for example, if we wanted to look at US exports of natural gas here, then that looks at this is 2.47 billion and minus 60% represents year-on-year figures. So you can actually look at the different years here. You can look at the different categories, as I mentioned. And this is a way that we can update and visualize the trade flows, because what we're ultimately trying to do is not only collect the geopolitical incidents, but also be able to correlate those trade flows. So whether it's geopolitical conflict, in Russia, Ukraine, for example, or the Middle East, or whether it's trade policy out of the US, this is a way to visualize the flows and the changes in those flows over a period of time, including future impacts, which we'll get into in just a little bit. And then finally, last but not least, we've got the report section of the platform. So here is where we house all of the forecast reports that we produce, and these do get updated on a regular weekly basis. And here I'll hand it over to my colleague Milos, if you want to briefly introduce yourself and then go over the contents of our latest forecast report.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. Good morning, everyone. So, yes, as Eugene mentioned, just wanted to hop in quickly and give a bit of a sort of broader, context on the work that we do, and that includes producing some of these reports, like here the quarterly. Just briefly about me. So, my name is Miros Maggiore, currently calling in from Europe, based in London. But yeah, I've been working with New Lines alongside Eugene for the past year and a half or so, mainly focusing on geopolitical analysis catered around the Indo-Pacific. But I've been obviously on the job here, helping out with especially the monitoring component of the platform, as well as the data analysis component. So back to this broader context. So as the monitoring aspect of this platform is largely based on a lot of the workflow that we do at New Lines on the day to day, and a lot of that revolves around analyzing several hotspots, we call them. And as you can see here, if you just scroll down a little bit, Eugene, we've got Russia, Ukraine, Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific as the three sort of largest hotspots that we deem the most consequential to analyze for our purposes. But at the same time, we do have a more thematic component to our analysis, and that involves the three that you can see next to it, involving trade, technology, as well as energy and climate. And so looking at the report as a whole, on the right here, you can see, if you could just scroll back up, we started off with a broad summary of the quarter as we see it, and looking at some of the key events to look out for. As you can see, the one that we started off with was October the 4th with Japan's Liberal Democratic Party presidential election, which just happened, and other sort of key summits to look out for going into the quarter. Scrolling down, the report opens up into the geopolitical hotspots. So as I mentioned, these are the big three. Now, there's a few things that we offer here. The first being an overview of the situation as it has been in the past quarter as well as the past year, and we do so not only in writing, but as you can see here, we do offer a kind of visual system, as it were, going through each of the quarters. And we divide this in several key, perhaps, trends that we've identified. So the first one being in yellow, as you can see, the status quo. Is this hotspot the same as it was during the previous quarter, for example? And if it wasn't, which direction is it going? And we have a scale that goes from the de-escalation. If we think of the Russia-Ukraine war, for example, Presidents Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky meeting and discussing a ceasefire would point to a huge diplomatic de-escalation, obviously. But on the flip side, we do have escalation, and that goes into two flavors, shall we call them. We've got the military escalation, representing any of your traditional forms of kinetic escalation. But as well, we've got the hybrid escalation scenario, which is one that falls short of a full military escalation, but nevertheless provides a departure from perhaps the de-escalatory trends that we see. And so by providing you with the trends over the past few quarters, you can start to see perhaps a theme emerging for these particular hotspots. So, for example, the Russia-Ukraine hotspot, you can see that at the start of 2025, at the bottom of that visual representation there, you see that the diplomatic de-escalation signs were quite high. The signals for some, discussion around a table were quite high. And that continued a little bit into Q2, but over the past half year, we've seen that noticeably diminishing in favor, unfortunately, towards more of an escalatory trend. Similarly with the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific actually deviates from this. As you can see, at the start of 2025, we measured quite a high potential for a hybrid escalation, what with talks of tariffs and trade wars. But over the course of the year, we've noticed more and more signs pointing towards some kind of de-escalation coming to fruition. So, pardon the babble, but this is a sort of broad overview of the main three hotspots. And Eugene, if you scroll down just a little bit more, the report also provides an overview of the global connectivity themes. So, as mentioned before, trade, tech, and energy and climate, all three of which you cannot separate from the broader geopolitical trends, of course. So here as well, we provide an assessment of the previous quarter and our forecast going into the final quarter of this year. If you could just scroll down just a little bit more, Eugene. Yeah, and the final sort of component of our quarterly reports are the more country level hotspots. So, of course, if you think of those three hotspots that we've identified so far, that leaves open a lot of the world to be identified. And this is what this section provides. So we actually have quite a large team that has identified a few other sort of country level, hotspots to identify. And these we measure on a scale. Again, we identify that status quo and see whether the situation in that country is trending more towards a stabilization scenario or a destabilization scenario. And as you can see here, there are quite a lot of countries that are erring towards destabilization on the right to varying degrees. And we provide that forecast that we identify for the last quarter. So this was quite a broad overview of all of the features that you would find in the quarterly report. Now, obviously, as Eugene mentioned, we do supplement this with weekly reports. And in fact, these quarterly reports do provide a sort of baseline against which we measure the ongoing trends and incidents that we provide every week. And as you can see here, this is an example of our latest weekly forecast monitor, we call it. So we start off with a broad summary, followed by the geopolitical hotspots. We're looking at the Russia-Ukraine, Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific zones, provide our assessments for the week. And then we identify a few other hotspots in which certain things have happened. So obviously, this last week we had the US government shutdown. In Afghanistan, we had this internet blackout, and in Madagascar there was another protest. A protest that seems to be following a trend across the world, noticeably also the Philippines and Indonesia as of recent, just to give you an idea. And then finally, we've got this section of the global connectivity. So looking more at the thematic trends. Usually they err on the side of climatic developments, or energy related ones, as you can see here with Australian natural gas, for example. But we do also take, monitor any ongoing trends in some of the other global connectivity themes, such as trade and tech. So this is a broad overview of what we provide in terms of reports, and obviously all of this work helps us identify the incidents that we populate the platform with. So I hope that was clear. Obviously, welcome any questions as to any of the points that I've mentioned. And yeah, back to you, Eugene.
Great. Thanks very much, Milosh, for that overview. So yes, as Milosh described, we have really global coverage across the international, national, and even global and thematic levels. And those we produce a quarterly forecast as well as an annual forecast as our kind of cornerstone reports. But we do supplement those, as Milosh mentioned, on a weekly basis. So there's a lot of global, updated coverage. And that is supplemented as well by that incident feed that I mentioned as well. So whether you guys are interested in kind of having that high level look at some of the trends, or you actually want to drill down into the specific developments themselves, as well as their trade and supply chain implications, this platform has the ability to do all of that, both from a situational awareness standpoint, but also from a forward-looking forecasting and simulation standpoint, which I think is a good segue for Alex to pick up the ball here.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. Really appreciate that. So my name is Alex Chosovsky. I am the president of a company called 3DM Analytics and Consulting. And my role in contributing to the platform was to focus on the business applications and translating the geopolitical environment into helping companies both assess the situation that is currently in place and using the geopolitical forecasting tools that Milos and Eugene have just highlighted to also predict and plan specific action scenarios that they can implement in response to certain geopolitical developments. So I'm going to reshare the screen here for the presentation that I had shared previously. I hope everyone is able to see that. And really, I want to talk about kind of where the proverbial rubber meets the road in terms of taking all of this information that the platform provides and using something that we've called the decision to metric matrix in order to connect that to evaluating decision making at the company and at the industry level. So as you can see here, there are 5 key elements to this matrix. There's the financial performance of a company, the operational performance, as well as customer and market-oriented metrics, strategic and risk metrics, and then the overall talent and organizational health. These do break down further into the specific measurable and quantifiable elements that each company keeps an eye on. I always say when I do my presentations to trade associations or when I consult to specific individual companies, you can't improve what you don't measure. And this allows us to measure the effectiveness or the quality of the decision making that we present as options within the scenario functionality of the platform, and then allow us to benchmark certain decisions against each other and compare how specific outcomes will look numerically and quantifiably in order to ascertain which ones are the better kinds of decisions. So you can see just a few examples here on the financial side. How does a decision affect a company's revenue or sales? How does it affect their return on invested capital? In terms of the operational side, is it improving or kind of worsening the productivity elements of a company, the cycle and lead times, the supply chain resilience, and then from a strategic and risk perspective as well, geographic footprint, regulatory compliance, risk exposure, both on the geopolitical and the cyber side. So allowing us to assign values to each one of the decision options that a company or a policy player can go through in one of the simulations, then allows us to quantify those making choices and tell them, is this decision better than others? And sometimes there's a lot of overlap in terms of a specific action can affect many of these circles at the same time. And so, it's a really interesting assessment of how does the decision affect these various performance categories of the organization. Now, speaking to the decision-making options, these are highly customized and customizable depending on what an organization, a policy player, or a government actor might seek to accomplish during one of our crisis scenarios. So you can see everything from inventory management to pricing. We also go into supply chain diversification and cost efficiency. Now, each one of the bullet points that you're seeing on these slides represents an actual choice that a company actor or a policy actor might be asked to make in response to certain geopolitical developments. And so I hope you can see how it's highly dynamic, highly interactive, and really allows you to game out a variety of scenarios and apply this war games mentality to business continuity planning, to strategic risk management, and certainly to supply chain diversification considerations as well. So if there was one thing that I would ask you to take away from this, is the platform itself is a consistent and a regularly refreshed source of information, both in terms of present and future outlook, as it comes from the geopolitical experts at New Lines Institute for Strategy. And the simulation element of the platform then allows you to play out various scenarios and crisis simulations in terms of what might happen in the future and how a government or a company player might respond to those developments. So with that, Eugene, I'll turn it back over to you to round us out here.
Great. Thanks very much, Alex. So yeah, we're wrapping up here, and certainly happy to get into Q&A here in just 1 minute. But before we do that, I just wanted to mention a few of our upcoming events, both housed within the platform itself, but also how we apply the use of the platform. So as I've already mentioned briefly, the platform does get updated on a regular basis. In particular, every Friday, we update that global incident feed that I shared, and that's curated from developments all over the world. We try not to do kind of an information overload, so there is a degree of curation and selection that happens from our analytical team. And then also we do publish every single week that forecast report, which can be found in the report section. So these are the features of the platform that get updated every single week. But of course, we also have other features, including the trade flows, including even some of the elements related to the strategic profiles of the countries that gets updated on an as-needed basis or as soon as that data becomes available. As far as other events, so we have, as you can see, quite a busy month ahead of us here, where we'll be utilizing this platform in a number of different external engagements. So, for example, we will be actually speaking and presenting at several trade associations here in the US, including GAUDA, IFI, and VMA, where we will be basically doing a presentation on how geopolitics impacts business, and in particular those companies for those trade associations, and even doing a simulation, at the business level that Alex briefly mentioned in terms of what that would look like, whether it's a crisis over Taiwan, a crisis in the Middle East, even things like global climate developments, how that would impact their business in the future and what they could do about it. We also have frequent engagements at the university and policy level. So, for example, we'll be doing a simulation around the Taiwan topic upcoming at UTD, at University of Texas at Dallas, as well as a workshop along with Maxime on how we leverage AI tools in order to really enhance this process, followed by an engagement in Europe, so close to where Milos is based. Actually, in the Netherlands, we'll be doing a presentation at Triodos for a financial and professional audience. So those are just a few of the events that we have coming up. And then finally, last but not least, I know that several of you on this call already are early adopters of this platform. So thank you to those of you who have already been selected to do so and have been engaging with the platform. But we're also in a soft launch period, essentially between now and the end of the year, where we're going to be doing a full launch of the platform by the beginning of next year. And so we are certainly looking for early adopters. And by that, we just mean people who are, find relevance from the platform that can commit to engaging with it on a regular, ideally weekly, but at least, monthly basis. And so if you're not already, I'll make sure to drop the link here in the chat in just a moment, but there's a register your interest form, and you can also find more information related to the platform and everything that we just discussed in that link that I'm sharing here at newlinesinstitute.org/forecast monitor.